Hey, we're live. Good to see you.
Woodshop live.
Now in 37 minutes, everyone will get a notification.
Yeah, yeah. It rained like the dickens again last night, so I'm sort of finishing up a few things in the woodshop that have been pending. I've
Well,
had a
what are you working on?
nice woodenware order recently for some pallets and covers, etc. Of course, that's what I built mostly, and I'm like, like, just cutting some
Hey, there's Larry
entrance
Gandy.
reducer wedges that I use for the entrance reducers, and on the three-way pallets, they're actually used as a reversible. You could say reversible entrance, but it's actually a reversible back.
Okay.
So that's what I'm doing. Just cutting these up. All of the equipment is in the yard, ready to go. This is actually part of it. So there's a bunch of frames, drawn frames, foundation frames, and stuff ready to go.
Morris Homestead swimming in the creek. Nice. I am. I pulled some honey and started a major robbing session in my yard. It looked like everybody that was chilling in the hive just said, "Hey, we smell honey." It's like a honey buffet, and it was like a cloud. And of course, I had my back to it, right? My back to the truck, working in the colony, and I turn around, and it's just a poop storm, if you will, to keep it G-rated on a Sunday afternoon.
I only laugh because, man, I've been there. It's brutal. It's really brutal.
So I just loaded up the boxes and took them into the honey house and stopped. And I actually put out some liquid feed to try to give them something easy to go after, where they're not scalping my my weaker hives, right? So did that and sweat through. Obviously, it's 99 degrees here today. Well, it was 90. I sent you the thing. The heat index was 99 earlier.
Got to be that here. It's not like, it's kind of warm, but it's so humid, so much rain.
Currently, well, it still says it feels like 99 out. 43% humidity. But it's, boy, is it hot out today.
Well, here's something a little different for my wood shop.
What? You didn't make that, did you?
No, I bought that.
Oh, okay.
I can't make that for what I can buy it for. It's just because I always say I don't build boxes. I hate build boxes, and I do hate build boxes. But what I've got is, if you watch my channel, you no doubt seen my nice little 4-frame nuke boxes. Well, when I built those years ago, what I did was I bought all the box pieces, and I bought twice as many long pieces, and then I cut the end pieces in two, made a new joint, and went from there. So what I ended up with, I just ended up with some spare end pieces that are like 8 inches long, 8 1/8, I think they are. And so last time I was out at the manufacturer, I picked up, I think there's 10. I picked up 10 of these long pieces, so I can then put my spare ends in them and make 5 more boxes, because I really like those little 4-frame boxes.
You could also, I guess, I don't know how they would fit, but if you had like my situation where the end bars are all flexed out, you might be able to knock off an end and replace an end type of thing too, possibly.
Well, they're good that way, because I can buy those in, box kits. I can buy flat pack boxes,
right?
But I can also buy short sides and long sides by the piece if I need that for a special project or something. So I just thought that I was sitting here and I thought that'll be something a little different for the wood shop, because I don't build boxes.
I never thought I would complain about pulling honey, but boy, I can't seem to get it all pulled off.
Yeah,
one reason or another, I can't get it all done.
Stressful, that's a real stressful part of my season. I was very happy last year, not from any wisdom on my part, but it went really well for me last year. My hive lifter worked good, and I just went out, started pulling honey, and it worked really nicely. The bees were good to me, and
Well, I mean, I didn't get any stings, which surprised me. Usually when you pull honey, they get kind of aggressive, at least for me, but they weren't into doing that today. They were just kind of chilling. But I'm starting to take, if it's an empty box that that they really haven't been working on, I'm just pulling them off. It's like too late for that, right? So just start pulling that off and reducing them down, trying to congest them a little bit. But
talk about taking things. Guess what I did yesterday? I actually on Friday got my mower deck on my tractor finally. So I mowed my apiary, and literally I mowed all the way down the rows of my beehives and between them, around and around, wearing nothing more than I'm wearing right now, shorts and a t-shirt, running shoes. And I didn't take one sting. It was just kind of amazing. I kind of was just testing that to see what would happen. And
now, were you driving really fast by them like I do? Like,
no, I wasn't driving especially
so
fast.
it's either really good, because if I accidentally bump a hive stand, I'm probably knocking them all down, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm
Well,
flying through.
I do bump my hive stands, but they don't fall down. So, but sometimes if you bump a hive stand really good, they come rushing out to see what's going on. And
So this is we kind of talked about this a little bit last night, but you and I, it's funny. I'm totally starting to get mine ready for after the season, and you're exactly just starting to get ready for the honey flow.
We should start getting honey flow in a week, 10 days.
And so right now, as far as your the State of the Union, State of the Apiary address here, so we know you had a bad winter and you were down to, well, you found a fourth, but three. We'll say three because we don't know where the fourth came from.
It had to be a swarm, eh? That's what I'm thinking.
And where are you sitting right now? Because I know a lot of the people that watch the stream
I haven't really done a count, but probably 75 or so.
Well, we had a beginning of the year, like when we were talking about this, I asked you, I said, well, what do you need to be able to keep your current clientele? Like, how much honey do you need, right? And you figured, well, we need about 80 colonies, right?
Yeah, I have 6,000 to 8,000 pounds. I can squeak by on that.
And right now,
looks like I'm going to have a little bit of overlap, but I'll have maybe 1,000, maybe 1,500 pounds of overlap by the time I harvest.
And you still have some zombies and some queens coming and stuff like that. So you should be.
Those should make a little bit of honey. They might make a deeper piece, perhaps.
So you should be in pretty good shape then.
Yeah, I think so. So if there's 75, and I don't think I'll get an average crop, because I don't think this season is shaping up to be a great season. It's just can't stop raining, and it's not that warm. We did have a good week, but this week we're back in the rain. So I'm not sure what July will bring, and the colonies for the most part aren't going to be tip-top strength for the honey flow. So I'm going to say 75 colonies might yield me 6,000 pounds of honey.
Well, I believe this honey that I just pulled today should put me over what I had last year. Not crazy amounts, but we've done a lot, this season to try to stabilize the bleeding here, stop the bleeding that was happening. And, if they're new or haven't been following, so my hives every year, 17, like coming out of winter, it doesn't matter. It just kind of crashes, and it starts this time of year, right? So I'm trying my best to combat that. Noticing a lot less hive beetles, a lot of different pests. So that's definitely contributing so far to the success of what's going on. I noticed I made I don't know if it's a huge mistake, but it was a mistake, right? So you go out there and you're pulling honey, and I'm going through the boxes. So if I have 5 frames of honey where they've kind of done one of these numbers from the brood chamber, and they've come up to the honey super, and they'll go straight up in the middle, right? And then it's like, well, that's 75-80%. I need to put another box on, so I put a box on, following the rules of beekeeping that everybody's kind of put out there. And then all of a sudden they do like one of these numbers and do 3 or 4 frames in this one and 6 frames in that one. And so I was just condensing those down and removing supers, and then I get down to that where that queen excluder was, because what I actually did is I get down to the queen excluder, and there was probably a ½ inch to an inch of just dead, solid dead drone bees, right? Drones on top of there, which, yeah, the drones died. That sucked. They could have mated, something and done something good, but it's not. It's the drones dying is not what really hurt my heart as much as it was blocking up all of the entrances and exits for the bees to go through. So I popped that excluder off, went down into the brood chamber, and I don't know if you do it this way, but when I start doing that to get them ready for winter, I go ahead and go down to the brood chamber, and I start on the outside and start pulling. If it's solid honey frames, they come out, right? They're coming out, and I'm putting comb in there, and hopefully,
I don't generally do that because my brood chambers are generally a single deep brood chamber through my honey flow, which my honey flow can be 6 to 8 weeks long. So by the end of that honey flow, there's really nothing to harvest in that brood chamber. So all of the honey has been put above, and that certainly isn't a panacea, because it causes some stress on my part, because once I pull that honey, boy, the bees are hungry. I gotta get them fed right away.
Well, so also what I noticed in that first honey super was slabs of pollen, right? I mean, it had honey around the outside, but where the brood had hatched out at one point, that's pretty much solid pollen now.
So by the time the brood had hatched out, then, and I was complaining about terminology earlier, so I'm going to have to be more careful. So when the brood emerged from that frame, then the honey flow was probably winding up, and what they had was pollen left, so that's what they had to store there.
Well, and so that's part of when I pull that from the bottom. Those frames that have the band of honey and pollen, those are what are getting put down into the brood chamber with the bees, because when those babies hatch out, right, they gotta get it.
Food. Yeah, that's baby.
And then so I don't want to make things difficult, but you have some boxes there, and Brad was ranting to me about us Americans and our terminology.
Not Americans. It's more common among American beekeepers.
Okay,
for sure.
So we'll use this as an example. I've got 3 cans here, right? The bottom can is a brood chamber, so it's full of bees. And then we come and put another box on it.
That's also a brood chamber.
Right. Unless you put a honey excluder, a queen excluder in there, and then put this on top. Now that's a honey super.
Right.
Because its purpose has changed, right? It went from being a second brood box to now only having the purpose of honey. And it doesn't matter what size that box is. It could be a shallow, a deep, a medium.
There's a lot of confusion among the names of sizes for hive bodies and the purpose for hive bodies. A hive body, and if you're only talking Langstroth, a hive body can come in a deep, a medium, 3/4, or shallow. I think that pretty well covers everything you'll see today. Those are hive bodies, and you can do whatever you want with them. I know a number of people who run medium brood chambers, right? So now the purpose for that hive body is determined by whether or not you've designated a brood chamber or you designated a honey super. And if you don't use queen excluders, that definition can be a bit vague and it can change. But if you use queen excluders, that's easy because above is honey supers, below is brood chambers. Now, the reason that, and I am a stickler for terminology. However, I'm seeing people have difficulty because those terms are muddied so much. And here's what I mean. I see people, I talk to people, and I see people on YouTube having so much difficulty and struggles because they'll pull a frame out of their brood chamber, a deep frame out of their brood chamber, for example, and it'll be half drawn, or it won't be drawn at all. It'll be foundation. And I think, why do you have foundation in your brood chamber? You gotta get some drawn comb in there. Well, how many drawn comb? You've been a beekeeper for 5 years and you have no drawn comb. Get some drawn comb. You can just buy some, or it's easier as you make some. So what I'm finding is the roadblock for so many people is so many people think that you can't use anything but a medium for a honey super because so
Right.
many people call a medium a honey super. It's a medium, right? Same thing with a deep. A deep can be honey super too. So this is why I'm starting to see this picture. People are immune from putting on a deep honey super to get themselves some drawn comb through the honey flow. Put a deep on. Like if
Right.
you're running two sizes, if you're running deep brood and medium honey, put a deep on your honey super side. Get yourself some drawn comb. That'll do you nothing but good things in subsequent seasons. You'll have lots of drawn comb after that. And I think it's really unfortunate when so many people are, a lot of times people are trying to teach and they're using these terms, well, this is a honey super. Well, it's a medium,
Right.
right?
That term
This
is
is a honey
really
super too, but it's a deep.
the term
Right?
is really should be based more on the location and the purpose. Not even so much the location, because just like I said, if you have 2 boxes or
Yeah.
10 boxes and there's nothing to discern whether or not the queen can lay brood in it, they're brood chambers.
Right.
Because she'll go anywhere.
If you don't have a queen excluder, the actual line between the two can vary, it can change, and can be less well defined. But principle remains. When you say, I'm going to take this honey super, a lot of times they say that they're picking up a medium and they're calling it a honey super. Well, it's a medium,
Right.
right? If you're going to use it for honey super, right? I use my deeps for honey supers. I have a few mediums for comb honey.
Well, Charlie uses he was using all mediums. So
a lot of mediums for
so he was using 3 mediums as a brood chamber. Right? So it just depends on how you're using. Okay, so Grant Simpson asked from your channel, after I roll wax on my foundation, how long can I store it before I have to re-wax it?
I've rolled wax on the fall before and used it in July. The next summer, it's fine. And that's my experience. So I don't know if you have the same environmental conditions for storing and whatnot, but I've had no problem. Your only potential issue there is if you store your comb in a cold storage, don't mess with it while it's cold, because if you bang it around while it's cold, then that comb and that wax that you've rolled on can flake off of there. So as far as drying up and stuff, I haven't had a problem with that.
So to answer this question, no, it's not.
A shallow is a shallow. You use it for whatever you want. Right? You could use shallow for a brood chamber if you wanted. You'd drive Dr. Leo crazy.
Well, I like driving Dr. Leo crazy.
It'd be a short drive, but
I do nothing conventional.
I'm just saying, because they want to run, double deep frames, but yeah, you can do whatever you want with those frames. You can run a 3/4 brood chamber, a shallow brood chamber, medium, deep, whatever you want. And again, to take that to another extreme, you go to the Layens people and they've hooked 2 deeps together for their brood chamber. Do whatever you want. If your intention is to collect honey out of that box, it's a honey super, right?
That's true. That is true.
So,
And
having said all of that, I just want to reiterate for everyone who's struggling with the lack of drawn comb, draw some comb this honey flow in a deep, right? If you're using a deep brood chamber and a medium honey super, which a lot of people do, put a deep honey super on, draw that comb, extract it, and save it for next season, because you will thank yourself for doing that by having that drawn comb available the next season. It'll do so much for you. It's incredible.
and I've done a lot of that this year because I started with a lot of nukes, right? And then the nukes, I was lucky. Well, I don't know if it's lucky. I had comb because I had a lot of dead outs, right? So I had extra comb. So when I got my nukes, I put in comb and let them grow into them really quick because she can lay up a lot pretty fast there, right? And then you put that second on there, and I did a little bit of checkerboarding once they populated that bottom box, which then they go to work drawing the other comb out. And then if they do that, then what I did is I shook all my bees back down, put the brood in the second chamber, had drawn comb in the bottom again for her with the excluder in between those two boxes. Now that second brood chamber just became a honey super.
Yeah.
So don't get
transitioning kind of thing, right? Because the brood will be emerging over time, but yeah.
And then next year, when you go to make splits, all of a sudden you have an extra 2 nukes worth of comb.
You've got a few boxes of drawn comb around, man. That is gold. That is gold. I sell that stuff all the time to people that don't have enough.
But you were the first guy that told me foundation is not space.
Yeah, I learned that the hard way. I had 28 colonies hit the trees because I didn't know that.
So the more
you need drawn comb for swarm mitigation. You need drawn comb. Foundation's not going to do it. Not going to do it.
Unfortunately, well, I don't know if it's unfortunate, but when you first start, you have nothing to do, right? You put that nuke or a package in there on empty foundation. They got to do something, right? And I have seen that nuke get in there and swarm as a nuke because they didn't want to.
I remember buying those 28. I bought those 28 queens from a lady here. She's a very good queen breeder, and she got after me. She said, "So what are you gonna do?" You know, so I told her, and she said, "You need drawn comb." She said, "You can't do that. It's not gonna work." And I kind of took a little bit of offense, right? But so I stopped by that day and picked up a few boxes of drawn comb. It was actually nasty drawn comb. It was kind of mothy and everything, but didn't matter. I stuck it in there, made my split, stuck my queens in there, worked great.
They clean it right up.
Need some drawn comb, and it doesn't matter if it's a little bit nasty. Can't be too crazy, but
so Richard says here, Texas, the wax moth and beetles are the biggest foe. How do you prevent the damage to comb in storage? Well, Sertan, or a lot of people are using the moth crystals, right?
I've never used a chemical. I don't have beetles, so I can't speak to that. All of my comb is stored in a Secan shipping container.
And they're
pretty bug proof, and I've had a little bit, sure, but nothing major at all.
I am
wax moth in there.
Going to be trying a new product that's coming out that's made by the people that make the Appy tablet, and he sent me some of this to try on my comb this year, which I lost a lot of comb to wax moths this year, and we're going to try not to do that again. Heaven forbid, I thought I had them stored inside, they'd be good to go. Oh, contraire to me, it was not that way. I lost a lot of comb. What's the shop project of the day? Tom Bacon asks.
Tom, yeah. Hey, Tom. Shop project. It's a little project. I'm just making some of the wedges that I use for entrance reducers and it's the removable back on the center section of my 3-way pallets. I've got an order for 8 assemblies, so I just need to make a few of those. I often make them to order. I shouldn't. I should have them kind of an inventory of those, but they're so easy to make, and I can make them out of offcuts quite often. I've got a whole bin full of offcuts here that are just kind of that long. I've cut
So
one
you
off.
just make a wedge that you can plug in from the front, and
Yeah.
because it's sloped, it just wedges in there. And
yeah, my entrance, my shim on the bottom on my bottom boards is 3/4 of an inch high.
Mhm.
So this wedge is 5/8. Or I'll turn it this way. It's 5/8 of an inch at the front, and it's 7/8 of an inch at the back. So it'll go under that box and it'll wedge in about halfway.
Do they propolize a lot of it?
Oh yeah, they'll stick it down. Yeah. Yeah, and you can, if you're using that as a removable reversible back on that 3-way, but like me, you don't actually ever reverse them. I just put a screw in it and it stays in there forever.
Tom says that sounds like a great idea for plugging colonies for OA.
Yeah, I think it would work pretty good. To get a tight fit, your entrance needs to be pretty clean, and your your entrance needs to be really accurate and consistent, and then your block needs to be consistent. So that's the only caveats there. I think it would work really great.
Let me see.
Well, today's a little project. It's did a little bit of bee work yesterday. Not too much bee work. I did some work in the apiary. Did that mowing. Apiary looks a lot better. It looks like a real
I've got
jungle.
some more bee work to do, but it's in the honey house, right? I have to go uncap and extract that honey.
Right.
So who was it that was saying they were in Texas? Richard Easley, yeah. So I have the same issue, and I pull my honey in small increments because I need to spin it out and keep the beetles from sliming it while it's in the honey house waiting to be extracted. So I do 10 boxes, 20 boxes at a time, whatever I can get off before they go crazy like they did today, and pull that and get it extracted so they don't get beetled out. Let's see. But yeah, that's kind of what's going on around the yard today. Not a lot.
Yeah.
It's too hot, man. 100 degrees outside. Nobody wants to do that.
Sunday, so
I mean, I'm soaked right now. You can't even see the light color gray that this shirt actually is anymore. Let's see. All right, Tom, have a good Father's Day, brother. And
thanks for dropping in.
So we just been hanging out, and Brad wanted to do the Woodshop live today.
Yeah, I say hi to peeps while I'm in the woodshop today. It's too wet to go. It's a nice day, but it's very wet out there. It rained a couple of really heavy storms last night, so I had to check the out yards today.
Yeah,
make sure all the lids were on. Thankfully, they are.
I think I've got 25 deep frames and about, I want to say 40 to 50 medium frames that I've pulled, but some of those at the end when they started robbing, I had it set off to the side. I didn't really go through the comb, and I just pulled it right to keep them from robbing because I shook all the bees down until they flew back to the comb and back of my truck, and it was a shit storm for real. I mean, it looked like Ian's when they first could fly out of the yard.
Yeah.
It was like a lot of bees in the air for me. So let's see. Larry says you crank up a weed eater in his bee yard and you better be wearing some stovepipes for leggings.
Yeah.
I have one of those battery, the rechargeable battery operated weed eaters.
Yeah.
And that works pretty well for the bee
I've got
yard.
one of those. It's great. I love it.
When I fire up that 2-cycle,
yeah, that.
And it's
then you got to haul gas. You got to mix gas and haul gas, and then it doesn't want to start. And then you know.
Oh, I buy it pre-mixed.
My
You don't. We got these. I don't know if you have them in
well,
Canada. But
I've got about 2 gallons of mixed gas here. I've had it for 10 years. I don't use much mixed gas.
And
But
so I just buy it by
you know,
like
and then you got to
$8
start
a
the
can.
dang thing, the electric one, and just pull the trigger and it starts.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Yeah. So Grant's asking about checkerboarding foundation.
Well, when you start, you have to start somewhere.
Yeah, you know, I'll put on a whole box of foundation sometimes. Usually, if I'm running out of comb, because if I'm going to use some foundation, I'll generally checkerboard it. I think that's probably best case. But you know, I've had good success with a full box of foundation. Now you got to watch your flow. You can't put that on near the end of your flow at all. You need to put it on right at the beginning when they're really hot and heavy, getting the nectar in. They'll draw a comb for you.
Well, who was it? Tom and Melissa say after the flow, they'll throw a box on and feed them heavily to get them to draw a box of comb out.
I've had no success. Well, I shouldn't say no success. I haven't had a lot of success with that, but that's just me. I think
Well,
because,
I haven't
because my dearth season is more than just dearth season. It's you know, cooler weather and stuff like that. So
well, mine is just so hot. I don't even think the bees want to get out and do anything. They're, you know, and we had this discussion. I was joking last night because Brad said, "Well, the ones you're seeing hive beetles in, are they in the shade?" I said, "Well, a little bit." I said, "But every box is shaded on the inside, so once the beetles get in, they're good to go, right?" I mean, it's like
they're not in the hive going, "Wow, is it ever sunny in here?"
Yeah. But you know, the temperature, I mean, it's just hot altogether. But yes, I do have a few more beetles than the ones that are on the tree line, right? They get shade from the backside. But yeah, they're I mean, it's not crazy like it's been in the past. So we like that. We like it when it's not crazy. Hey, Grayson.
I'm looking here because I can see the comments up here on my channel.
I've had a few issues with them making comb really fat and touching the checkerboard plastic. Yeah, I've had that as well.
What's that?
So when you have two foundations next to each other, or a drawn comb and a foundation, they will draw the comb really fat where it actually goes into the side of the comb that they're drawing on the side. So you'll have comb, but you'll have like a big divot or crater in the comb.
You can have, and part of that is due to the lack of wax on the foundation. And generally, I will run a honey frame 2 years before I call it good, because generally the first year I run it in a honey flow, it'll come out a bit thin. You know, I'll extract that, and often I'll have to scratch it with the scratcher because the uncapper won't reach it. And then I'll just run that one more year, and then it's a nice frame of drawn comb. So it's a process, you know. And that's why I always will suggest, if you're running a different size of frame in your brood chamber versus your honey super, run the brood chamber size in a honey super each honey flow. Get yourself some extra drawn comb. So that I would always suggest. Do I run online sales? I don't sell online. I have a website, but it's just for information for my customers to show what products I have. I don't ship anything, so it's kind of pointless to sell online. They just phone number. There's a contact form there and whatnot for people to get a hold of me. faithapiaries.ca.
Could you imagine shipping a truckload of your pallets out?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I have shipped equipment. So, and I've got an order for down east for next spring. So there's going to be a shipment go out. I don't know. He said that he might even just drive up for a visit, pick it up, but we'll see.
And James McNally made it back to Canada from the States. So
yeah, amazing.
You watch that, hanging out. Amazing.
It was amazing. He was flying WestJet. It's amazing he made it at all. Michael, good afternoon, boy. Okay.
Just finishing a new out yard. Should hold
Putting up
15 double nukes.
Putting up lots of new yards.
I wonder if now's a good time after the flow to move bees to a new yard.
What you thinking?
Here, I mean, they fly all year round, so I don't know that it's a big issue. Other than I'm toting syrup out to an out yard to feed them when I don't have to do that
in one place.
Yeah, so.
Yeah,
but
it's more about production, and if you're not in a honey flow, then production is moved.
But so that's good, man. Out yard. I've been trying every time somebody comes up and says, "Oh, we just love bees." Well, would you love them enough to have some at your place? You know.
Oh, not that much.
Not that much. We like that we can stop here and see your bees. So yeah, I'm looking for the same thing. You'll be feeding no matter where they are, so not much reason to move them yet. Yep.
Yeah, you got to. People ask me sometimes. They'll ask, "Well, how many hives you put in a yard?" And what they're meaning is just exactly what you're saying, Bob. They're saying, when do you saturate an area? When does your production start to suffer by having too many colonies? And that's a very subjective question because you can't tell. It all depends on the forage available, etc. But the answer to that question has nothing to do with that, because the answer to that question is, how big is your truck?
Well, yeah,
right?
If you do,
because you're not going to go with half a truck load of bees, and if you got to go twice, pick a second yard, right?
Right.
So
well,
that's the answer.
So if you do math here, if you math it up, try to do some bee math. If the national average is 55 pounds and I'm pulling 600 pounds, means really I should only have around 12 colonies here on average. I have 70.
Yeah.
Plus.
Yeah, your production is likely suffering.
Which could be why the bees are telling me 17, 23, 17.
Because
right?
I produce my nukes in my home yard, I generally end up with way more colonies in my home yard than I intend to have. Last year, I don't remember how many colonies I ended up having, because some were full production hives, some were nukes, and some were little nukes and all that. So but I do know that I pulled 7,500 pounds of honey out of that one yard, which blew me away. I couldn't imagine pulling that much honey out of one yard.
Which is kind of, I mean, if you think about it, when people say 1 yard, right? So where I'm at, I do have houses around me, right across the street, not necessarily real close to me, but I don't have just open fields of forage, right? Like when a farmer is late getting out there to mow his field down and it's full of all kinds of wild blooms. I don't have that, right? Even though the people don't necessarily keep their yards up very well here.
And you've been here, right?
Oh, yeah.
And you know that, I don't know that I'd say that I live in the boonies, but you can definitely see it from my house.
Right. So that's the thing that I'm looking at is like, man, I need to move some of these. And, you know, Mr. Sam, if I said, hey, I need to move 20 colonies out to the nursery out there, he would be right over here to help me load them up and get them out of here, right? That wouldn't be a thing. But then, like I said, well, now I'm driving 5-10 miles down the road, having to make sure I've got everything, feeding them. So, yeah, I mean, I'm just getting to the point that it doesn't matter how many bees I have here, I pull around the same amount, right? Maybe 600 pounds, maybe, you know, something like that in the yard. And I also believe it's stopping the growth of my nukes, because they can't forage as much. It means the bigger colonies are getting more of the forage, which means the smaller colonies are slower to bring in the resources, which means that queen is going to be slower to ramp up as well. Yeah, so
could be.
And all of this I've gotten just through observations of, like, when you say something like, oh, I can take a 1 frame split and it'll produce me honey in the fall or in the flow. And I'm like, man, I can take a 1-frame split and it may not make honey next year. It's that kind of deal.
Yeah.
So yeah, just trying to work that out.
And the point was made, at the question of out yards, the point was made too, that you were saying, well, is a dearth a good time to move them? It's not inconsequential, the time and expense to be driving out yards all the time, right? My new out yard is my primary out yard is only about 3 miles away. My new one is about, I think, 10 or 12 miles away.
And then part of me says, well, if I move the out yard now they're not competing with the bees right here for the little bit of nectar that is out there. They have their own nectar and forage sources once they locate them over there, wherever that is, to start with. So, yeah. And then you got to move the hive stands and, everything. It's not just the colonies, right? You got to move everything. And then, well, does this out yard have fresh water anywhere? Where are they going to find their fresh water from? So it's more than just taking bees and dropping them off in a yard somewhere, right?
No trouble finding water around here.
Oh yeah, it's everywhere. In the grass.
Not a problem.
Here it gets so dry my driveway cracks.
Yeah. Not very often I have to bring I've got a kiddie pool out by the apiary, rocks in it, and it's on a pallet. I'll just go grab it with the tractor and bring it out to the house, fill it with the garden hose if it's really dry. But not very often I have to do that. The rain just keeps it moist.
Boy, I guess I could load up all these pro nukes I have out in the yard in the back of the truck, close them in one night, take them out and just drop them off in the field out there and so be like, okay, I'm going to bring back stands and start setting these up. And this week, type of deal.
You have to have a stand system that's very simple, very easy to transport, very easy to set up.
Pallets, you just drop them on the ground. They're already on their stand.
Pallets are nice. Yeah.
And I was making, it's cinder blocks, right? So that's whatever how tall they are on the side. I'm not sure. I haven't measured it. And then just some 4x4s on there, right? Or
yeah.
And it works pretty well. Yeah. But you always have people say, oh, it's got to be this tall. Well, if it's 6 boxes tall on top of the brood chamber, then that's pretty high.
Yeah,
and now you're looking.
Mine, you see my 2-way pallet, right? That's how high mine sit. So they sit about 4 or 5 inches up. Is the top of the bottom bar is 4 or 5 inches above the ground, and there's quite a few here you see in my home yard that I actually have a 2x6 stand. So that's another 7 inches kind of thing above the ground. And honestly, when I go to harvest the honey off of the colonies that are on the stand, it's too tall. I can hardly get the honey off. It's so tall. But that's just, that's my flow. Last year I was trying to harvest honey. It was well over my head. It was.
So when are you going to start piling supers on? I mean, if you're talking about 2 weeks before the flow starts, are you going out this next week and start dropping empty?
I'm keeping an eye on things, and probably, I don't know, either late next week or early the week after.
You're probably looking more at the weather and when you have the potential to get out there and do it.
Well, yeah, that's a nice thing about adding supers. It doesn't take very long. I can add a yard of supers in 10 minutes. But
you also got to take queen excluders out, right? So you got 75 queen excluders.
To just add a super, that's easy. But yeah, you're right. This first round, it's add queen excluders and shake those second boxes down if that's what I'm doing. But here's something different. I'm going to try something different this year. I've been vowing to winter colonies outdoors, and I'm going to try to set that up this year in a few different configurations. I'm going to run some doubles, so I won't be shaking those bees down. I'll just be putting the queen excluder, adding honey boxes, and I'm going to actually add some medium brood chambers. So I'm going to run a deep and a medium brood chamber, then a queen excluder and honey boxes.
Okay.
Above that, and just set them up like that for winter, and so that I can get a handle on how to winter that stuff outdoors. Because I want to start wintering outdoors, to be honest. I just want to reclaim my building
Right.
for the winter. So,
well, if the success rate is not that different,
0
like you said,
with one percentage point. Yeah, it's not.
So I
And
mean, you might as well.
wintering indoors, the bees have a distinct disadvantage wintering indoors, and that's when I bring my bees outside in the spring, because I'll bring them out 1st of April, give or take a week, right?
Right.
It's not that warm, and the nights are still cold. So those poor bees, they've been inside all winter. The clusters are small. They're struggling, and I bring them out into potentially -10°C at night,
Right.
and they're not wrapped. So the outdoor wintering people, on the other hand, they'll leave their bees wrapped right until early May, and their bees just build like crazy, and they're really strong. That's what I'm looking for.
Well, it also, yeah, outside it does let them. I mean, if you get that day that it's like, okay, it got a little bit warm today, where
I'm gonna say,
they can actually just stretch their wings if it's warm enough for them, right?
I don't think there's any advantage to that at all. It might be a disadvantage.
The poop. I mean, the ability to poop when they want to.
Well, because I know how they winter indoors. If they're sequestered indoors for 5 months, it's not a big deal, right? As far as not being able to poop, you bring them out, you better stand back, because it's going to happen.
Right.
So that midwinter cleansing flight, yeah, but you know what? You get 1 day of warm weather, they're not going to all go out and poop.
Right.
Some of them, or even most of them, maybe. And there's always the phenomenon that, you look at Lloyd Harris's data, that as soon as they start flying, then that clock starts ticking. So that's not a positive thing. My bees in the building, they're in stasis until I bring them out, and then they start flying. So I get to dictate that. Whereas if they're wintered outdoors, I don't get to dictate that. Well, every year I get to about this week or next week in the season, and I start to get really afraid that I'm going to get no honey this year. But every year I have. So yeah, I'll get honey this year. If years past are an indication, I'll get honey this year.
DC must be watching on both channels here.
Oh, is he?
Long, narrow pole barn that just keeps the snow and rain off of them.
Yeah, actually, that would be counterproductive in my environment, because the best environment for them is under a snowbank.
Because it becomes like an igloo. Thermal barrier, but they can keep the warmth inside.
Right.
And it keeps the wind off of them.
Keeps the wind chill off them. And I think equally as important is it keeps the sun off. So it doesn't cause them to have that 24-hour warming, cooling cycle with the sun. So it creates more of an environment like they would have inside my wintering building. Constant temperature, dark, sort of anybody that's ever been in a snow fort knows it's not that dark in there, and no solar gain. So there's no variability there. So that's the best environment, really. They don't actually need that much insulation. Bee cozies, for example, they are sufficient for wintering bees in my climate, and they are, I think, R8 for a bee cozy, and that's enough. If it's a healthy, well-fed colony, that's enough. And I know that's enough because I've wintered with bee cozies and not lost one colony.
Let me see. I'm just trying to keep up with these things.
Yeah, the mites don't build up in the wintering building because there's little to no brooding going on.
So if you can get them if you can get your mites in check, then they stay in check until the spring.
That's right. That's right. Getting your mites in check in the fall is key. But if you have them in check in the fall, they'll probably be pretty good in the spring.
Richard says it's 93 in the shade. Yeah, it's 94 with a heat index of I think 99 was the last I saw. It says it's very hot outside today. Well, no crap. Let me see. But last year at this time, we were getting 110, 114. So we're actually a little bit cooler than we've been in the past. Oh, it's saying it feels like 102 now. There you go.
22C here.
So yeah, it's been brutal. And as soon as I started pulling honey, evidently they smelled it a mile away because it got really busy in the bee yard all of a sudden. And it was noon. So you figure they would be out and about. And I've got to go start doing the extraction process in my honey house, which I don't know, maybe I'll get 2-3 more buckets. That's the hope out of that. And I still have more on the colonies, but it's starting to come down. I'm starting to take those. Oh, they're not dealing with this frame. Take that out, right? And I'm just condensing it down, drawn comb, moving some stuff like I'll move some brood into that second brood chamber and drop drawn comb in the bottom brood chamber and removing my honey supers.
Honey super.
Now, some of my brood chambers are 1.5 at the moment, and some of them are double deeps, and some of them are single deeps.
For sure. And really, in most conversations, that the size is irrelevant. I had somebody the other day. They were they're asking me a question about what they did with their bees and want me to give them some input or something. And they started telling me that they put a super under their brood chamber and this and that and this and that. And I stopped them and I said, why would you put a honey super under your brood chamber? What are you telling me? I don't understand what you're telling me.
You just made it a double brood chamber.
Well, no, because they put a honey super under it. They didn't put a brood chamber under it, right? This is what I'm getting at.
Well, it's only a honey
super.
super.
To explain to me what they're doing, and yet they're telling me they put a honey super on the bottom of the brood chamber, and they totally lost me there because I don't like to put words in people's mouth, right? I don't want to. If you're going to tell me one thing, I don't want to right away change what you're telling me into something else. Like I want to take what you're telling me. I think that's respect. To not change it, say what I think you're telling me. No, I want to get what you're telling me. And if you're telling me you put a super under your brood chamber, I'm going to ask you, so that's something different. Why are you putting honey supers under your brood chamber? Because they're called a super because they go above.
They would be a sub if they were below.
It would be a sub, a honey sub, not a honey super. It'd be a honey sub. Then you're managing a warray hive if you're putting your supers on the bottom.
Right. That's true. A warray hive and a Langstroth configuration. There's a book there. We could write a book on that.
The what?
We could write a book on that. Running a warray hive in your Langstroth hive.
Running Langstroth equipment like a warray hive.
So did they say why when they did that, Brad?
Oh, it was a while ago. I don't remember what was going on. Mike just sent me he said he was setting up a new out yard. He just sent me a picture of that. I don't know if you can see it.
Who's setting it up?
Nice yard. Hey?
Who's setting that up?
Mike Menino.
Oh, okay.
He just said he's setting that up. He sent me a picture.
Yeah, and if you're in Canada, you got to put bear fence around every apiary, every out yard.
Yeah, he's in the northeast U.S., but he got the bear fence for sure.
Well, we've been going for almost an hour. live
Yeah.
after our, I don't know, 30 minutes of not being live.
I'm glad people could join us. That was fun.
Yeah, it was fun. And, everybody enjoyed their Father's Day, and all that entails, which is probably not much if you're a father. We know how it goes. Mother's Day month or Father's Day, maybe.
You get to be fathers.
You might get a card, you might get a text. That's what I typically get. Happy Father's Day text. It's like, oh, gee, you went way out of your way on that one. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. And it's funny. And I get it. I get it, right? At least in my case, I worked when I was younger with my kids. I worked excessively, like Saturdays, late in the evenings, overnight, so it was mama that was there doing that stuff, right? The cooking and the taking care of them and going to Walmart, and I get it. But, there's something to be said that you're out there and you're doing it as a father and having the ability to allow that to happen, right? For your children. And I don't think they see it all the time. At least mine don't. Mine really don't.
Fathers don't do it for the accolades. Fathers do it because that's how
we have to.
Their family love, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of families go through that where dad is away a lot. My dad was away a lot, and when I was young. So there's a lot of that. But
all right, I got an opinion to ask of you.
Yeah.
So do I go back to the bee yard and start pulling more honey off and put that in the honey house and extract that later? Or do I go in and just extract out what I've got in there now and do it another day?
I'd probably extract what you got. So you're just cherry picking. You're doing what I call cherry picking, right?
I'm trying to. Well, I am pulling the supers off, right? But I'm kind of condensing them down and at the same time giving them less space, right? But the thing is that, man, with 70 colonies, it takes a minute to pull that honey off of there.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, it does.
And I feel like if we're in a dirt, the longer I leave it in there, the less honey I'm going to be able to harvest because they're going to consume it.
They're eating your honey right now.
So it's like, man, I just need to bite the bullet and sweat and pull as much as I can get off in the next few hours. And then when the sun goes down or starts to go down and it gets cooler, maybe go in the honey house and just batch out a bunch of it.
Yeah, I think that's what you should do.
So, I might go out there and catch the heat stroke. Again,
Ivan just got a swarm of bees in an empty box. He said that's the first one this year, so that's exciting.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. All right, guys. Well,
that one that showed up in that hive at my place. That's got to be a swarm, but
you didn't see it swarm.
Like, where did it come from, right?
Well, probably your bees from years. See, I always look at it like this way. If I catch a swarm in my yard, like on a bush, and I don't actually see it, it's either one that swarmed from my hives, most probably, or if somebody around here calls me, I feel like it's probably a cast-off swarm from a colony that I had swarm in years past that now has cast off a swarm, and I'm bringing them back.
Don't usually last the winter here. It's pretty tough. It's not unheard of, but it's very rare. And there's not a lot of beekeepers near me.
Right.
So, there was a new beekeeper moved in about 2-3 miles away. So could have been that one.
Could be, yeah.
Which is really awesome because I sold them their bees last year. So I just got the bees back.
It's the gift that keeps on giving.
Oh, well.
So Richard says, where can I buy online the 6-frame boxes that you and Ian use?
Lewis and Sons. lewisandsons.ca. Is it lewisandsons.ca? Let me look it up.
It's a Canadian company, though. So if you're in, I don't know, Richard, are you in the States? Or are you in Canada? I think you said you were in Texas, right? And they use a different dimension lumber than we do in the States.
That's right.
So they use
Lewis-
7/8 or 3/4.
Lewis and Sons ENT Enterprise .ca if you want to look them up.
Well, they'll ship to the States, right?
They'll ship anywhere.
Just know that it's a different dimension lumber. So your lids and all are going to be different.
Let me show you. You're in the United States. It sounds like a very slight difference, but it's actually a considerable difference. If you're in the United States, your boxes will be made of 3/4 inch material, which is what that is. Okay. In Canada, boxes are made of, hold it this way so you can see, 7/8 material. See that difference? It's a big difference.
It's hard to see it on the outside. Maybe touch them end to end. Or side,
Try to line them up. That's hard to do. Oh, hard to hold in my hand. It's only an 8, but it is a difference.
Yeah.
Where you see that difference remarkably, and this is a side, so there's no rabbit in it, is on the frame rest. That thin part outside the frame rest is much more robust on these because it's thicker.
Maybe it wouldn't bow out like the ones that I got.
And I think it's a lot more stable. Yeah, it is. So like I say, that's, you can see the difference here.
Yep.
Between this and this. So
yeah,
your box is going to be overall 1/4 inch larger in width and length.
And
on the outside.
And a little bit heavier.
Yeah, they're a little bit heavier. This is yellow pine. It's either southern yellow pine or eastern white pine is what they get. I don't know if somebody knows species. They might be able to tell me because they'll get both. I think this is probably eastern white pine, and it's not super heavy, but it definitely, those boxes, they are got some weight to them for sure, but they're robust too. Boy,
yeah.
They take a beating. They really take a beating.
All right, guys. Well, we got work to get back to, and I'm sure you guys have stuff to do. So we appreciate you stopping in and watching the live chat here, and we'll see you guys on the next one.
Thanks for coming in.
Goodbye, all.